James Broughton, Port Townsend, Washington, 1992. Have you ever wondered what might occur if you were awakened from a deep slumber by a kiss, like some figure in a fairy tale? Well, it happened to me. With many distinguished films and books to his credit, James was a major creative presence of his day. In 1954, he'd been presented a special award at the Cannes Festival by no less than Jean Cocteau, who kissed James on both cheeks. In 1972, James arrived in my hometown of Monterey, California, to present new work at the local film festival I was helping to organize. I was utterly entranced the night I witnessed James in person. Afterwards, during the reception, James spotted me across the crowded room. Coming near, he took my face in his hands and peered into my eyes. "Don't worry, everything will be all right," he said, and then he kissed me on the cheek. James remained my friend and spiritual father until his death 27 years later. Even today, I imagine that a big piece of him continues on as a wise and enchanted guardian angel. Don Kilhefner, Red Rock, Arizona, 1979. At the center of any community, a sacred heart must beat. That has been Don's place and purpose in gay culture in Los Angeles and beyond. A founder of some of Southern California's most important community projects, the Gay and Lesbian Center, Van Ness Recovery House, the Radical Fairies, and Gay Men's Medicine Circle, Don has worked tirelessly for gay liberation over many decades. Of Amish Mennonite heritage, he was part of the anti-war and civil rights movements and worked in a remote Ethiopian village during the 1960s. In the decade to follow, he played a key role in forming Los Angeles Gay Liberation Front, a path-blazing group. The list of his subsequent accomplishments would fill pages. Suffice to say that he is one pioneer who still keeps an eye on the future. He works today as a Jungian psychologist, a soul guide and prophet like no other. We're at a critical crossroads, facing the choice of assimilation or affirmation, he said the day I took this picture of him at the first ever gathering of Radical Fairies. We have to understand that being gay is not the same as being homosexual. In profound ways, none of us has really come out yet. Harry Hay, Wolf Creek, Oregon, 1987. One of the most important things anyone ever said to me was, "It's a gift to be gay." They were nearly the first words out of Harry's mouth when we met in Los Angeles in 1979. He was busy launching the Radical Fairy movement, a visionary new approach to gay consciousness that would have as much significance as the Mattachine Society did 3 decades before. He was the principal founder of that group too, the first ongoing gay organization in the nation. I loved being his friend during the next 23 years until his death on October 24, 2003, at age 90. I've never known anyone who could be so serious and yet so wry in one sentence. This photograph was taken at the end of a glorious August day in the pasture of a recently established fairy sanctuary. Harry's thoughts that afternoon were of the past, however, as he regaled me of tales about how difficult, frightened, and lonely gay life once had been. "Never again, Mark. Never again," he said, eyes brimming with tears. I believed him, for I never knew Harry not to be essentially right. Ram Dass, San Rafael, California, 1993. I can still remember the fragrance of the late summer day when I finished reading Be Here Now by Ram Dass. I was 19 years old, and while I did not understand everything about the book, I knew that it had inexplicably changed my life. My attraction to the message and its messenger continued over the years until one day, 22 years later, I was invited to his home for an extended conversation. I was overcome by the radiance emanating from his eyes. Ram Dass, after all, means servant of God, and the meaning of that path was made suddenly clear. He had once been a Harvard professor who had experimented with LSD, then traveled to India and returned a changed man. His life has been devoted to compassionate service ever since. His teaching, writing, and doing for others is absolutely legendary. Not long after this photo was taken, Ram Dass suffered a debilitating stroke, which he continues to valiantly recover from. Once the awakening of consciousness occurs, he told me, you begin to see the ways in which your suffering are good things to work on in yourself. Suffering still stinks, but now it's grace. Assotto Saint, New York City, 1991. Asoto was one of the most important gay poets of his generation. Asoto was working on his final collection of poetry, lyrics, essays, and performance texts, Spells of a Voodoo Doll, the day we met in his West Village apartment. His lover of 12 years had died of AIDS the previous month, and Asoto too was now struggling with the disease. Still, he was clear-eyed and spellbinding in his beauty. For Asoto, love was all. I don't know why I'm here, but I will respect my fellow human beings, try to understand them, and expect the same. That's my spiritual value. Gay men have gone through such trauma, we often hate ourselves. To them, I say, before you love someone else, you must first love yourself. Asoto said his name is the word for a very big drum in voodoo, a native religion that affected him very much during his childhood in Haiti. While he died 3 years after this photo was taken, the lyrical, courageous art Asoto left behind continues to sound. Joseph Kramer, Oakland, California, 1993. A former Jesuit seminary student in Missouri, he left that life behind in 1975 to go to New York City. He wasted no time in exploring its pulsating gay scene, searching for ways to better integrate his sexuality and spirituality. Joseph eventually moved on to the West Coast, where he completed his formal studies at the Graduate Theological Union in Berkeley. Then he founded the Body Electric School, which sponsors workshops using a unique blend of erotic massage with Taoist philosophy. The experience has powerfully affected the lives of thousands of gay men and other spiritual seekers around the world. My eroticism is the soul glue that weaves me all together, weaves me together with other folks, Joseph told me the day we shot this photograph in his backyard. It's the adhesiveness Walt Whitman spoke about and that I use in my work as a body-based sex magician to call forth transformation and healing. I admire Joseph for this very reason. He listens beyond the sound of one hand clapping, focusing instead on the celebratory music made possible by you and me. Fakir Musafar, Kenton Mine, California, 1994. Fakir started life as the proverbial duck out of water, raised by a loving but uncomprehending family in a small South Dakota town. He came to the West Coast in pursuit of an education, career, and family of his own, and he found all three, living and working as a Silicon Valley advertising executive, but sensed there was something amiss. By the late 1970s, his true self began to emerge as a principal visionary of the modern primitives movement. The sun was blazing hot in the sky when this picture was taken. Those are not shadows you see across the face of my friend Fakir, but streaks of mud. He had been richly adorned with earth as part of a celebration to the Great Mother and to joy itself. Fakir defines himself as a shaman in assisting people to let go of their inhibitions in order to change. He is a fearless warrior for personal healing. To be able to dip your feet into the primal, now that's a balancing thing, he says. Robert Mapplethorpe, San Francisco, California, 1980. Robert and I met through a mutual friend, a gallery owner sponsoring an exhibit of the photographer's latest work. The prints were primarily of black men, with a sampling of previous imagery, highly controversial pictures of hardcore male sexuality that had made him world famous just a few years before. Robert's provocative persona seemed far removed the moment I took my picture of him. We spent an afternoon talking about the range of his interests, all reducible to capturing the single perfect moment of whatever fell in front of the lens. "I don't understand the way my pictures are," he said. "It's all about the relationship I have with a subject that's unique to me." Taking a picture and sexuality are parallels, he explained. They're both unknowns, and that's what excites me most in life, the unknown. His soft innocence belied the hard reality ahead, for he would be dead of AIDS just 9 years later. Clyde Hall, San Francisco, California, 1993. Of Shoshone Métis descent, Clyde was raised by his grandmother in a one-room cabin on the Fort Hull Indian Reservation in southeastern Idaho. He left his community when he came of age to travel the world and discover himself. A large piece of what he found was his hidden tribal heritage as a Tubasa, or two-spirited one. Clyde eventually returned to his people as a gifted magistrate and teacher. He also joined with other gay and lesbian Native Americans to give new life to the once honored roles that third and fourth gender individuals once had in their cultures. I took this picture of Clyde while hanging out of a second-story window of a house in the Sunset District not far from the ocean, with the cheerful sounds of children echoing from the courtyard below. Seldom have I met anyone with such a harmonious inner glow. "I live a spirit-filled life," he explained. "If you try to talk yourself out of living a life with spirit, you get into all kinds of trouble. My grandmother's homespun words say it all. Be true to yourself. Pride in oneself, walking in balance, then expressing that pride and living it." Ed Steinbrecher, Los Angeles, California, 1992. Ed grew up in a family of astrologers. When he was a young man, Ed had an intimate relationship with Morris Kite, legendary figurehead of Los Angeles' gay liberation movement. Their meeting obviously had a profound influence on the life still to develop. Over time, Ed emerged as a quiet but enormously astute observer of queer folk and their role in the greater destiny of the world. "The spiritual potential of gay men is incredible," he explained the day we met in his sanctuary-like home. "They form one of the most important communities on the planet right now." As a professional astrologer with many famous clients in the world of arts and entertainment, Ed displayed a serene detachment that served his practice well. But beneath the quiet demeanor, I could see his passion burning bright. He was very good at what he did, one of the best, and so I listened carefully. "Being gay means you are born different, but the extraordinary power of that has yet to come to full consciousness. It can't be found by looking outside. Gay men still have to wake up and go inside because the world is in such a mess." Malcom Boyd, Kalapana, Hawaii, 1989. Malcom was sitting on a beach made out of the lava of a nearby volcano when the mountain decided to once again blow. Within hours of when this picture was taken, fiery trails of magma were dashing to the sea, sending up furious clouds of steam and smoke from blackened fumaroles. I could not have thought of a more perfect backdrop for this famous disturber of the peace. Born into a wealthy Manhattan family who lost it all during the Great Depression, Malcom has picked a path through his life uniquely his own. During Hollywood's golden age, he worked as a producer and business partner of silent screen icon Mary Pickford. The glamour was dropped in 1951, however, when he decided to become an Episcopal priest. Years of hard work and activism followed, marching with Martin Luther King and Selma, and getting arrested in the Pentagon for conducting an anti-war peace mass are among his many badges of honor. He is probably best known as the author of 30 books, including the internationally acclaimed Are You Running With Me, Jesus? He came out as a gay man in 1977 and was shunned by all, but a few. Time has healed many old wounds, further salved by a long-time relationship during the past 21 years. Malcolm is many things, but most important, he is the man I love. Essex Hemphill, Los Angeles, California, 1993. A writer, poet, performance artist, and activist, Essex discovered his gifts and his sexuality when he was 14, growing up in a poor black neighborhood in Washington, D.C. Essex criticized racial divisions within the white gay community, but equally condemned sexist attitudes among black men. He was a truth-teller without boundaries. I will never forget the day he exposed Robert Mapplethorpe before a huge audience of fellow scribes, claiming the photographer was racist. His raw passion electrified the crowd, as his words did everywhere. In 1991, he released Ceremonies, prose and poems, which won him wide national acclaim. I took this portrait of Essex a couple of years later, struggling with the complications from AIDS that would take his life on November 4th, 1995. Essex read these words to me. I speak for the thousands of men who live and die in the shadows of secrets, unable to speak of the love that helps them endure. But we are not going away. We are coming home. Paul Monette, Los Angeles, California, 1992. What should one save in a burning house? The answer, says the French proverb, is the fire itself. My friend the author Paul Monette not only saved the fire, but stoked its blaze with his considerable talent, rage, and commitment to excellence in all things. Yale educated, Paul started life as an English professor, then fell in love with fellow academic Roger Horwitz in Boston. The first shots of the gay revolution were being sounded, a cause both men advanced until Roger's death from AIDS in 1986. Paul recounted their poignant daily struggle against the disease in Borrowed Time, an AIDS memoir. In 1992, Paul published his masterwork, Becoming a Man, Half a Life Story. The week after I took this photograph in his backyard, Paul won the National Book Award, our country's highest literary honor. The lightning rod of history that has struck my generation of gay men has struck me, he said upon accepting the award. My writing has kept me alive. But Paul knew that he too was dying by inches. A deeply spiritual man with a profound grasp of life, Paul finally succumbed to AIDS in early 1995 at age 50. Lou Rudolph, San Francisco, California, 1981. My friend Lou was a one-of-a-kind person in a cookie-cutter world. Lou worked as a bartender at the Ambush, a south of Market leather bar, in order to support his painting habit. Between gigs, he'd strap buckets of pigment and raw canvases, some as large as 6 feet square, on the back of his motorcycle and go charging around town to capture whatever was happening that day. We don't all see the same, like so many cameras off the assembly line, he said while posing for this picture in his paint splash studio. Let me sing my colors at the top of my lungs, and you're invited to dance along according to your own personal poetry. From sex club orgies to the hippest punk bands in town, Lou painted it all. My work is not just about a documentation of people and places, but of sound and energy, he once told me. Then adding with his familiar sly grin, while I am aiming towards some artistic depth, immediate gratification remains one of my favorite things. Lou died of AIDS about a decade later, emblematic of all the vibrant and talented gay artists who seized the glorious moment, but are virtually unremembered.